Ability to swap out die sets is one of the key features of manually loaded machines. So you can basically use a variety of different size eyelets in your machine by changing the die set. The procedure is actually pretty easy, and I like to do this in a way that I get everything out of my way, which is a few more steps than some people might take, but I think this is the easiest way to do it. So the first step is you want to remove the material tray from the machine. And to do that, there's just a couple of Allen screws back in the side of the frame, which you're going to loosen. And you can just hand loosen them a little bit, and you should be able to slide that tray right up and out. You don't have to remove the screws. Then we have a safety cover on the front of the machine. Easiest to just have this also out of the way. Loosen one screw, drops right out of place, and pretty simple. Now I have complete access to the top die, punch, and bottom die. Next, I'm just going to loosen a few things here, and I'm going to use a tool that comes with the machine. They call it a puncher tool, simply a tapered metal rod, and I'm going to insert that into one of the holes that's around the circumference of the top die locking collar. And by pushing that in the loosened direction, I've loosened that top collar, and I'm ready to take the top die out. I'll also prepare to take the bottom die out. I like to get these down out of the way as much as possible, so I begin by loosening the set screw in the front of the machine, and then again, let me just tilt this down a little bit, and I get into the hole in the bottom die holder with the puncher, and that allows me to turn it. I may be able to turn it by hand, which I am in this case. Sometimes they're a little sticky and you need the puncher. That gets the bottom die out of the way of the top die. I'm going to remove the top die and punch assembly, and I can do that by simply turning, grabbing the top die itself and turning. And as I'm doing this, the one thing I want to be careful of is not to drop the assembly on top of the blade below on the bottom die, because I could potentially break the blade. So when it starts to get pretty loose, I want to keep my hand under it and guide it out of the machine. Now I want to loosen the bottom die from the holder. And to do this, I'm going to actually go back now and tighten the set screw here. I'm going to use the puncher tool again. I'm going to insert it into this die, and then I just want to loosen it, and I can take that die right out. Alright, that's die removal. Now we'll reverse the process. But the die set I'm removing, it just set a number 4 rolled rim stainless steel eyelet. The next die set that I'm going to install is for number 2 sheet or embossed rim type eyelets. And I'm going to start with the top die punch assembly. The way these go together is very simple. You have a spring piece and the punch comes through, as you can see. And coming from the prior die set that was in there, the number 4, we have the top die assembly, and this collar right here needs to be used on the new die. So we're going to take this off the one we just removed and then install it onto the one that is going into the machine and bring it all the way down. And at this point, this is prepped. The bottom die simply goes back into the holder. Oops, no it doesn't. There are different sized holders. Smaller dies use a smaller inner thread on the holder. So the next thing we're going to do actually is to take this holder out of the machine. And that's easy. It's just a simple matter of loosening this set screw again and undoing this all the way. This will end up having to come down very low to get out of the machine. So you may have to lift the machine depending upon how it's set up. And I'm just going to take this right out. Okay. Okay, now on I'm going to hold these together. On the left, we have the holder that just came out of the machine. On the right, we have the holder that we need. You can see the difference in the inside diameter. The outside diameters are identical. The inside diameter on the right one is for smaller format dies like this number 2. So it is this one that we're going to use. And we need to again thread this up into the machine first, and that is simply lining it up carefully. Do not try to turn this. If you feel any resistance in those threads, you may have it cross-threaded. Right. And I've brought that holder up so that it just pokes above the frame here. And that's where I want it. At this point, I'm going to lock this up for a moment. Okay, we're going to move on and put the top die assembly in. And that's the part that I showed you a few minutes ago, the assemble setup of the punch, the top die assembly, and the locking collar. You have to locate this on center and catch the threads properly so that we don't have any cross-threading, and it will thread freely if it's in there right. We're going to bring this all the way up. We're going to keep the collar here down toward the bottom so we can bring the whole assembly up as far as it will go. There, that's in place. We're not going to lock anything at this point. We'll just position that like that. Now, we're going to put the bottom die in, and we're going to go back down here to show you that. And we're going to locate that carefully, thread it in without any cross-threading. When we get it just about all the way down there, then we use the puncher tool to finish tightening it into the collar. Remember, at this point, this set screw is tight, so it's going to keep the die holder from moving. And we want that nice and tight. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is to put my safety stuff back in place here. This machine cuts the hole in your material and makes the setting in one cycle. This punch comes down and just comes against the blade on the top of the bottom die. This needs to be a perfect relationship where the punch just comes down just enough to be able to cut the hole. So I'm going to show you that at this point I've got the bottom die all the way down, and with it in that position, if I cycle the machine, and I want to show you that right now the punch is not touching the bottom die. So the bottom die has to come up considerably. While I'm holding the activation switch down, I'm going to start turning the die holder at the bottom here and moving the bottom die up. As I'm turning it, it's coming up and up and up, and it will come up to a point where you will start to feel resistance. And that resistance is that the blade is touching the punch. And at that point, stop and reverse direction, bring it out about a half a turn to a full turn. So now we've created a little space between the punch and the blade again. And then we're going to fine-tune things. And the way we fine-tune is we take a piece of material and we activate and we inspect the material. Actually, there's no hole there, so I still need to move this die up quite a bit. I'm going to move it a half turn at this point, and I'm going to try it again. And I don't know if you can see this. Yeah, you can see it. There, little indentation kind of in the middle of the frame. I'm going to bring it up another half turn. I'm going to do a test. I actually hit almost the same spot, but it's a little deeper. I'll come up another half turn, do another test. Now I'm starting to make some real progress here, denting it pretty good. So now I'm going to go like a quarter turn. I'm almost there. I'm going to come another quarter. And now I've almost cut the hole. That being the case, you can see that it's attached by like a fiber here. You're almost there. Just move a tiny little increment. Don't move like a quarter turn or an eighth turn. And try it one more time. And there we have it. That set the distance for the bottom die to the punch. And now what I want to do is I'm going to go back in and just lock the position of the bottom die holder. Nice and tight. Okay, now I can predict how well this is going to close a grommet setting at this point by doing another cycle and without any material there. And what I want to draw your attention to is the relationship between the top die and the bottom die. And actually the top die is just about lining up with the plastic guard right now. It's a ways above the bottom die, so that is not going to close a grommet setting. So we know now the top die needs to come down toward the bottom die. By the way, when you do this, you're not changing the position of the punch relative to the bottom die. Completely safe to move the top die down. So we let go of this, and we're just going to reach in, and I'm going to start to move the top die down. And I'm a pretty good guesser, so I'm also moving the collar back up toward the frame of the machine, because in a moment I'm going to have to lock that. I'm going to have another look at this, and I'm going to zoom in for you. And actually, the two are just about meeting, and that's kind of where you typically want to be. So, without doing anything further here, the next step I'm going to take is to remove the guard for a moment. And then I'm going to use my puncher tool. What I'm going to do is basically pull that locking collar tight, and that just secures the position of the top die. That's all set, and we can return the guard to its position. And now if we take a grommet set, we should be able to get a fairly nice set. And we do this by just pushing the grommet onto the top die and placing the washer on the bottom die. Then I just take a little folded piece of material here for test purposes and hit my trigger. By the way, if you're using brass currently, one of the things that really is important to note here is that we're setting stainless steel. Much nicer metal, particularly if you're using this in something that's going to go outside. Your brass will discolor outside and look terrible and eventually be sort of staining the material, whereas the stainless will look pretty much like it looks right now a year from now. This video has been just under 15 minutes long. However, once you become adept at making die changes, they should only take less than 5 minutes.